Hey everyone, let's draw some more props. So let's start with this potion, and I wanted to start drawing the whole process to show how I color stuff and etc. And you can use that for the other things. So you can actually really follow along if you want. So I would start with drawing the base of the potion, like this here. So something like this. So here you can see when I draw a circle, I start with drawing, a lot of lines basically. And then later I'm going to clean it up. So now let's draw this part. Let's make it bigger. I always like to draw a little big. So zoom in here, this a little bit to the side, and now we can draw a circle here. So you could follow along and try to get as close as I would follow then the image, as close to the image as you can, and learn from that. But you can also make a different design and also follow along. So here I see this part. So you could also do this on paper in your sketchbook or something, but then I would, of course you can use transform and etc. And then, usually I just use the eraser tool to fix stuff. So here we have this here, and here drawing this shape here. And then let's draw this shape here. So I'm drawing these shapes through it to get the construction right. So now let's lightly erase these lines. And I like this approach of working because it's so easy. And maybe there are better technical ways to do this, but I like it. It's still like you're using traditional way of drawing this stuff, and I do like that. And that's also how you get this life in these things. A lot of times when I use a lot of technical stuff, I have the feeling it starts to get really, how would you say, stiff. So here, let's draw in this whole line here. And then here we have this hole. So see how I draw through these shapes. So here, this thickness. So there's a tangent there, but I can fix that later. Not worrying too much about it now in this phase. So now I've basically made all the shapes. Like if you're 3D modeling, then you have all the shapes, and then you start to add some details and textures. So let's make this a little bit bigger so I can zoom in. And then here we have this sketch. Let's start drawing. Add a hole here, and still keep it loose. And later we can clean it up, ink it. So drawing this line here, going down here, and then a line here. So maybe here. And add some shapes like this here. Going around this. And here. So now we have this going here. Have this line here. Let's add some details, be a little bit rough. This here, and we're drawing this line here. And just keep adding stuff like this here. And this here. Let's go. Let's erase this part. I just keep adding stuff and adding some thickness. Later, I'm going to clean it up. If you can follow the image, because here I'm going a little bit quicker, but I also want to show the progress. All right, I want to show this time lapse. This I will fix later. Where do I want to have those bubbles? Somewhere here. Close. If you're studying it, take a little bit more time than I'm showing here. Of course, I don't want to make this video too long. And yeah, if you want, you can also pause the video, of course. So here, let's erase these lines so you can barely see it. So this is actually also the technique I would use when I'm drawing on paper. So I really like to just draw on top of this sketch. So like this here. And draw all these lines on top. And going here. Adding a line here. And then something like this. Going here. Down. Following this shape. Like this here. Make this smaller. So what I also like to do is using contrasting shapes. So using small shapes, big shapes. That really adds a lot. I'm not even using too much line weight in this kind of drawing, because eventually I'm going to yeah, add some more colors to the lines. So here I notice my lines are a little bit wonky. So what you can do in Photoshop, put the smoothing on, and then it's on 5%, and it will make your lines just a little bit smoother. You can also turn it way up, but then yeah, then you get these really mechanical lines. So I do like these little imperfections in it. It makes it sketchy. You can also use a brush to make these little imperfections. It's also fine. A lot of times I do like to use a regular brush like this. When you're starting out, I would even recommend to start with regular brushes. So it's for everyone different, but I think the benefit of it is that you are focusing on what's important, the drawing part, and not too much on the brushes. It's really, especially with digital art, it's really tempting to use all these tools and stuff to make your art look better. But if you can make a good drawing using really basic tools, yeah, that will make you yeah, that will really give you a good foundation. And then later, when you're starting using special brushes, it will only make it better. But you don't have to rely on it. You don't become a slave of it. So here, down here, then, so going here. And then going around. There's this thickness of the glass. So there's some space between the glass and the liquid. And up here. And this here. Let's go around. Let's go here. Let's add these bubbles. Like this. Let's delete this here. Go around here. And now we've made this this bottle. So start adding some colors. And I like to start with the main colors. I'm using these kinds of sliders, HSB. H is for hue, S for saturation, and B is for brightness. I made a tutorial about painting, how to paint digitally, but that one is also about how to pick colors, etc. So if you're interested in that, check that one out. So here, but here, picking these colors. So I'm always careful with the amount of colors I'm using, because I want to keep it harmonious. I want to keep it looking easy to look at, right? That's a lot of times a lot of my art is all about. So here we have this red orange shape here. Here. So I like to use the brush. You can also use different tricks, but I don't know, there's just a lot of times I'm just watching something and then I'm coloring stuff. So sometimes also like to do is to figure out this color, maybe make it dark or something. And pick this color, make it darker, a bit grayish. Maybe Ctrl U to change the color. So again, I've talked a lot about this in the paint tutorials, so don't want to be a repetition. But here you can see a little bit how I work. So let's put the transfer off. I really like to use these, straightforward way of working. Let's use this color here for this rope. So like this here, let's go down. Let's do this here. Let's fill this line here. This here. Here. Can add this. Let's go down this part. Let's fill it. And that's this here. This green. And going around here. this. Let's draw this object here, or this symbol. Let's put this here. And now we've did the basic colors. And what I then do is just take a soft brush and select the shape, pick this color, so there's a lighter version of it, and just start some light here and there, a little bit darker parts on something, a little bit saturation up, and I would just try to play around with it. So here this green, maybe make this a bit darker. And I like to change the colors a little bit for the shadows. What I mean with that is moving that UE. Then here adding these kinds of tones. See if I like it or not. Maybe using the selection tool like this here. And changing it. Like this here. Something like this. Yep, and just move on. This darker, like this here. This a bit dark. So adding this here. Right. There, and these ropes. This a little bit shadow. This here. Going around. And here. This. Maybe add some shadow here. And here. So it's this. Darker. Lighter. So something like this here. Just these whole parts a little bit darker. And after this, I will start showing how to draw all kinds of different props. But I wanted to show a little bit how I finish in drawing. And this is basically the technique I'm using. It's pretty straightforward, right? Here we have these lines. You can also turn off the lines and start painting it, but that's not really this tutorial about. So just I add this icon here and I select these lines, and now I can start coloring these lines like this here. Adding here a bit of some stuff here. These colors here and there. Like this. Give some light here, like this. give some shadow beneath this object. It's here. Let's move it like this here. It's lighter. Then once we have the reflection, so liquids here, something like this. So that's how I color these kinds of objects. Let's turn this off and let's move to other tutorials. So here we have this lantern, and as you can see, it's based on a square, right? So like I've shown in the previous tutorials, for example, here you have this shape going like this here, and let's make this heart. Let's go down. Let's go here. So this is just a quick idea of the perspective, but I do have these perspective points really far away in mind. So let's start drawing these on top. So also this here. So this is a little bit of guesswork, but the cool thing is once you've learned perspective, you can start guessing, and then you will notice when it's off, right? And then you can change it. And it needs some practice, but it also gets that cartoony feeling to it when it's not that perfect. So I want to have that. So I can also sense some kind of flow in it like this here. And that's why I always say, yeah, think about these kinds of things, right? So here we have this line here, shape here, and then we have this here. Let's go around here, and this around here. So something like this. And once we have this here, we can start adding in. Yeah, we can start adding stuff. Here. Here. And here. Here, then these lines, and you start drawing on top of it. So these are really good practices to do. I can really recommend follow these steps. And here, this what I'm showing here, I really believe these parts are really the most important parts, these constructions. So once you get this right, this feeling, you can start drawing in all the all the details on top of this. For example, if I want to draw the candle here inside it, it's useful that I've drawn this whole square here. So now I can draw in the candle inside this here. So yeah, then we have the compass, And what's hard about this is that we have these circles. So this one is okay to do. So first is this round shape like this here. So, and this can be really tricky to learn, right? Drawing these kinds of shapes out of hand. And I would just recommend practice it. Try to fill a whole page with these kinds of shapes. Like I said earlier, and you will learn a lot from that. So once we have this, start drawing inside in it like this here. Let's draw this object here, like this here. Then shape here. Then we have this here, these lines. Yeah, I can just start sketching on top of it. So here. And what I usually did for making this tutorial, I looked on internet for just an image of a compass, and I loosely based on it. Watch how this part is connected to that part, and then maybe I add some stuff. But here you can basically see how I sketch this stuff, and I keep adding lines on top of it. And I would recommend, follow these steps. And maybe that's really hard, but try to see it as a puzzle. Try to figure out how to draw these steps. And I would really recommend to start really rough, like I'm doing here, and then just keep adding stuff. So I want to really focus on, because with the potion I really showed all the steps. But I really want to show these rough steps here to give you an idea how to get those first things down. And I really believe that's the most important part. So when you're learning props, and I can really recommend for everyone starting out, is to it really helps you learn how to sketch these shapes. And also here you can see, again, I'm not drawing the perspective, but it's useful to learn the perspective. So for example, if we look at this object, there's a perspective in it. So what is perspective? So this is a vanishing point 1, and this is a vanishing point somewhere here, far, actually really far away, I think, so somewhere here. So sometimes I use a ruler or something to figure this out, but now, as you can see, I just pinballed it. So you can also add these lines here. And you have this line, and we also have a vanishing point 3. It's really down there. It's also this point where all these lines go to. But of course, you can't always draw all these lines. It always would take too much time. And especially for this cartoony style, I think it is charming when some things are a little bit off. But that's also really hard, because sometimes when it's too much off, it doesn't look solid anymore. So you want to have that construction right. And it depends on the style, how wonky stuff is, right? Try to look at animation, movies, TV shows, illustrations, and try to see, how wonky do they do. So here you can see actually how I start sketching in this this treasure chest, and how I start drawing in all these different shapes on top of this square, right? I try to build on top of it. So try to see these tutorials as puzzles and follow the steps and try to learn how to follow it. For these coins, for example, I start with this ball, this here, this shape, and then I start drawing in these kinds of circles, these coins inside it with different angles, right? Like there's one, etc. And I just fill this whole shape. And once that shape is filled with all these shapes, then you still have that round feeling in it. Another thing is, for example, here we have this this edge like this here. When I draw this log on top of it, so something like this here. Yeah, I also think about the perspective and how to add a block on top of that. So, but this will really help you understand how to draw all these different shapes. So let's see this one. So, like I said, I'm not always drawing all these perspective lines. Sometimes I start with some lines like this, maybe rotate them a bit. And once I have this here, I start drawing here these lines like this here, maybe a little bit like this. And then draw in shapes like this here, come down here, these lines. So here we have this perspective, so make these perspective guesses. But here you can see it's one shape, two shape, and then here these shapes are all loose shapes, right? So yeah, and then once I have this, I can carve stuff inside it, right? So it's really useful to understand the 3D thinking here. You can see me drawing through it, but even when you don't see this eventually, of course. But I really want you to learn this stage, especially when you're starting out. That sketching part is way more important. So here the same for this one. This one is a bit harder because it's tilted, right? It has this angle. So start with drawing a plane, and this plane. So if this is the floor, here this is up and this is on the floor because of that wheel here, right? So the wheel is there. And I'm also drawing these perspective lines, and yeah, basically this is how my sketch would look like. This rough, and later when I start figuring everything out, I will maybe make it straighter or clean it up. Now I noticed I have to tilt this a little bit because this line is tilted. For example, if we have this, and when we tilt this line goes this angle, right? So that's what I'm doing here. So, and don't forget, I make a lot of drawings when I'm drawing. I make a lot of errors when I'm drawing, so don't worry too much about it. And it's also has, I always like to give things a little bit of that edge. But here you can see actually the rough sketch, and it's not too far how I would actually start out. And then I erase these lines and I start with these big shapes like this part here. Giving it some thickness like this here. So I would really recommend to just try to draw these shapes following the steps. And I actually like, because I get a lot of questions, why don't you have from all these objects all time lapses? And I think it's useful to learn from these time lapses and draw along with me, but I think it's much better to try to figure it out yourself. Try to see it as a puzzle. Take your time for it. Don't worry about how much time it takes you. Try to think for yourself, because eventually you don't want to be an need all my videos to draw all this stuff, or that you always need videos or things to draw stuff. You need to learn how to eventually do it yourself. And of course, it's really good to start with following step by step, because that is a little bit easier, and or else it's too hard. But at one point you need to figure it out yourself. But I think it's really good to learn from these images, and that's also how I learned to draw. So let's move on to the toaster. And yeah, you can use, for example, yeah, look at your kitchen, take one object and try to, yeah, yeah, draw an object from there. So here we have this one object like this here. Here we have these parts like this here. Let's draw it. This here. Let's add the shape here. And the shape here. Yeah, this one. And so basically you can start with something like this. So this is maybe how I would start. Sometimes really rough, and then start to sketch it really loose. So, but what I could recommend you, if you are up for a challenge, go to your kitchen, look at some, if maybe you have a toaster or something else, a blender or something, and try to draw it and start with these basic shapes. And I think, and that can be really hard and frustrating, but you will learn so much from doing those kinds of things. Or it can also be a displayed thing. So I actually started with this sketch, but I didn't like the angle. So here I started with this angle here, but I find it quite boring to have this front angle. Also, how much of time do you see a thing like that in that angle? So it would be more cool if we draw it with this perspective inside it. So also try to give things a little bit of an interesting perspective. Not everything needs to be super dynamic, but think about it. And also learn to draw, yeah, quickly study, draw objects like I'm doing here. Just a rough drawing like this. Fill your sketchbook, pick an object and try to draw an object like this in different angles. This loose, just in these shapes. Fill a whole page with one object from different angles. And, it's a great practice also using those kinds of shapes, and yeah, it will also improve your drawing, how quick you're drawing. Scroll. Maybe you can draw your own scroll after you practice this this tutorial. Make your own illustration on top of it. See how I'm drawing through these shapes. And I think first it's really hard to be this free when you're sketching, so don't worry about that too much. But at one point you want to try to be a little bit loose with drawing, and here in this stage is so important. So here try to get some nice lines, etc. And you can learn it a lot by studying first this one by one, and after a while, when you start practicing all these images, it will become more of a second nature. So let's look at this shield here. Yeah, I think what's also interesting about the shield is once when we have a shape like this here, and going down here, here, then a line. So here, these lines show how the shape bulges out, right? So, and then you know how to add all these extra lines on top. So I really want you to think in 3D. So go experiment with that stuff. So here are some backgrounds, and can you see how much yeah, props and objects are in that? Here's a prop, here's a prop. Maybe you can even call this tree a prop, or this house prop, or what this characters are holding, or here, or this boat. You can see it's full of props. All these props combined are basically the environment or the background. So yeah, once you learn how to draw props, you can fill an whole environment with props to create a background. And here's this kind of object you would probably see in the background, right? So I can show it a little bit. So for example, if I'm drawing an environment, and here we have this horizon line, and here we have this perspective like this here. And I want to draw this prop here. So here I'm drawing this perspective thing here. Again, I don't want to go too much in depth about perspective because it's an important subject for this, but here let's add this perspective point there. Then here just drawing in these basic shapes, but I'm actually following the same steps here. So I like this here, adding these shapes here. So maybe that's something you can try to draw this object in an environment, and I would recommend that after you studied the perspective ebook or how to draw environments. But yeah, here you can see how I actually did that. So maybe this one is also interesting, and here I'm actually showing this line of action, right? So here we have this line like this, and on top of that I'm starting to add all these shapes, trying to find some nice interesting angles to get it playful, right? So when I'm sketching this, I'm trying to be really free. And maybe you've seen other tutorials talking about a line of action, and it's basically a line of action for a prop. So once I have these shapes, I just start drawing the arrows on top. Really try to learn how to break down all these shapes in more basic shapes, right? So here, this plates, and try to think 3D. So here, this going over on top of this shape, etc. And I want to give this some thickness, like this here. And then here, this line here. Yeah, just keep building. Erase these lines. Then here, draw these shapes here. And then here we have these lines. And yeah, just start drawing on top of that. And just keep building. Maybe another thing I could explain about this is, for example, if you see this text, yeah, what I usually just did is just typing, for example, there, a bit smaller, and a bit like this here. Dark, like this here. Merge it together, make it white. And yeah, of course you don't see it, so let's not make it white. But yeah, this is basically how I change this. So I'm using Ctrl T to maybe make the perspective right, like this here. Once I'm going to draw on top of it. So for example, if here this plank has these cracks in it, right, like this here, then I erase these parts a little bit. Maybe I erase some parts like this here to give it a painted look, etc. So sometimes I use fonts to add on these things. So let's turn this off. Yeah, here it is, arcade. Maybe that's interesting. Again, you can see, yeah, for example, here we have all these different shapes like this here. And how I broke this all down. So I add the shape here, like this here, and then I draw a shape inside here, like this shape here. Then we have this thing, right? But here, let's maybe show. Here we have this perspective, right? So this plane. So let's make first the front view, because I want to have the texture. See here, I want to have it on top of the thing. So maybe we have a texture, like here's this character. This is a full illustration like this here, and we have this. Hello, space, or something, I don't know. But when we put it here, you can with Control T, and then pressing Control, get this free transform, and we can put it in perspective like this. And then you can start erasing the parts you won't see. Like this, and that's actually how I added this texture on top of this arcade machine. So another shape here again. Yeah, starting with these really stiff shapes, like this here, here, then here, and in this shape here, and then the shape here. Then we have shapes here, and then shape here, and then shape, and then here it is. And so I start with these really not organic shapes, and then I start drawing more organic shapes inside it, also with this flame here. Trying to be having these random shapes. Okay, here is these flames. And yeah, just keep adding these kinds of stuff here. So later I will also show some flame stuff. But this is basically how I would start with this here, and then I'm starting to draw here these kinds of shapes. Try to be loose, not overthink it. That's really funny with drawing, when you just don't think too much and just draw. And that's also funny when you're learning stuff, you need to think a lot, but that makes your drawing stiff. So it's not a problem if your drawings are stiff when you're just starting out. But once you've learned it, you can not overthink it too much, and then you will become more, yeah, it becomes more second nature, and you really start to draw more dynamic. So here, these lines here, and etc. But it just takes time. But I really want to focus. When you're starting out, these steps are really important. And to get to this stage, practice a lot. Keep studying my drawings or other drawings you like, and slowly but steady you will get there. So here we have this room, and again you can see all these different props. And yeah, I want to give you all maybe an exercise is go to your room and draw all these kinds of objects you see there. It can be your TV or your closet, and start really with simple objects that are just basically really big boxes, and learn from that. So let me show one example of that. Here, this bed. So this one. Like this here. Like here. And here we have these angles like this here. Like this here. So what I did here, you can see here it has these angles, right? So it's not going, could also have drawn straight, but I think this gives it some playfulness. Also watch out with making it too extreme. But now, on top of this, I start drawing in these shapes here. So I'm using this box as a base. I don't try to use too much of these measurements. When you're starting out, I would recommend, use so many guides as you can. Don't worry about it being too stiff. Maybe follow first the tutorials, but here I want to show a little bit how I draw these kinds of stuff. So let's draw this box here. So what I also just do, I just start, right? And then when I see an error or something, I fix it. But you need some kind, you need a bit of experience to get that level. But when you keep practicing drawing, you will get there eventually. So here, then here, draw this shape here. And then here, let's add these things here. Let's add here these shapes. See how loose I am. And of course, I need to fix stuff eventually, but I will do that later. You can also draw this first and then add extra perspective lines to really figure out if everything is working. So actually, let's make this all a little bit bigger. So something like this here. Let's raise this a little bit. And let's draw on top of this here. So here, draw this line here. And drawing shape here. And a line here. Now let's go down here. And let's draw this shape here. And you start drawing on top of these shapes. So that's basically how I draw these things. So what I would recommend is, go draw your, go pick an object from your bedroom or any other room and start, pick one prop and start drawing that. Maybe start with something really simple, try to cartoonify it. So what I do is how I make it all these things cartoonify, and I would always recommend use reference, is to try to break it down in simple shapes and make those big shapes a bit chunky, etc. So here, here these shapes. So you can see I'm changing these angles a little bit from the original. For example, here, if you have this lamp, if you have a realistic lamp, you would have something like this, right? But I make it more cartoony by, for example, here adding these kinds of angles like this here. Try to be really loose and playful without and make it wonky. So, and that can, and that just takes time to get at that stage. At one point, it needs to get in your system. And one way of getting that in your system is study my drawing, follow these tutorials along, and slowly but steady, you will get better at it, the same as I did. It also took me quite some time to get at that stage. So here, drawing this here, adding this shape here. And now you can start drawing some smaller shapes on top of it here, like dividing these parts. Here, think about the perspective for these lines. And like this here, and then you can start adding here this perspective of the shadow. Like this here. Here. Let's draw this here. And then we have these stars, stuff. And let's draw some circles like this. And yeah, just keep working on it. So here, like this, and yeah, now you can start inking it, erasing it. Maybe put on a new layer. Take a dark brush, and we can start adding some shape. So here I'm changing this shape a little bit. So not a boring circle, but try to give it some kind of funny shape. And also think a bit about the angles and the corners you're giving to give it some funny shapes here. Lines doesn't have to be perfect straight because this is a wooden bed, so it doesn't have to be perfect straight, etc. Yeah, just keep adding these details. So I don't want all these lines getting in one point, right? So I move this line here to avoid a tangent. Like this here. And just keep working on it and having fun. So this stage really takes a lot of time. So what you can also do here you can see I'm almost adding a line like this here. I didn't do that in original, but I think that's a bit more interesting. Can you see that little dent? That's yeah, let those lines sing a little bit to make it more interesting. So yeah, that is how so pick an object from your room and start drawing it like I did here. Make a study out of it. And if that's a little bit too difficult, use my tutorials first to learn how to do that step by step. And yeah, learning to draw takes time. So take your time for it and enjoy the ride. So I see you in the next video. Thanks everyone.